Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Streaming Media Connect for this next great panel, really important and timely panel, Caption This, Making Live Streaming and VOD More Accessible. Thanks to our sponsor, VideoLink, for making this panel possible. Just a little bit of busy work before we get started. First of all, for the first person who can correctly name the track and the artist in our chat and who is here at the end of this panel, they will win a $50 gift card from Amazon, courtesy of Streaming Media Connect. But you have to be here at the end of the panel. And as someone just mentioned, you can't have one already this week. So that contest is now open. Also, just to differentiate, you'll see in the chat, Steve, our producer, will put a lot of links to our LinkedIn profiles and content that's brought up during the panel. Also, he'll include there the YouTube page where you can see all the content from Streaming Media Connect on their YouTube page later this week and into next week. But if you have questions for the panelists or the moderator, put those in Q&A. So the questions go in the Q&A and they will be answered. If you want to chat or you want to look for information about the panel, that will be in the chat. Also important to note, that you want to circle the date next May 20th through 22nd, right here in New York City, IRL at the Intercontinental Hotel Barclays, Streaming Media NYC. I'll be hosting and chairing that conference. Submissions are now open for panelists and keynotes and other content for the conference. Circle the date. It's going to be an awesome and pretty fun event here in New York City, the center of the universe. I think that's everything I need. Oh, one last thing. If you want to add captions to this, again, another pertinent topic, go to the More button in the lower right-hand corner of your Zoom window, and you'll see enabling captions right there. So without further ado, this is our panel, Caption This, Making Live Streaming and VOD More Accessible. I'd like to bring to the stage our wonderful moderator and contributing editor to Streaming Media, Nadine Krefitz.
Thank you so much, Evan. This is Nadine speaking. I'd like to have all the panelists join us now. Wonderful. So today's panel has a lot of interesting information that we're going to cover that you may or may not know. So we'll quickly go through some of the basic things and then jump into some more technical details. Today, I will let people introduce themselves, and let me go first to Imran.
Sure. Hi, this is Imran Muscatia. I'm a product and engineering advisor. I consult with media companies. I've been in video engineering for the past 25 years in a variety of different capacities and companies. Most recently, I ran product and technology for a company called Evoca TV, where we were one of the first ATSC3 broadcast companies. With a hybrid broadcast and broadband delivery system. And currently I consult for video companies, mostly in the realm of ATSC3, the new broadcast standard.
Okay, great. We're going to definitely have some questions about how captions and ATSC3 work. This is Nadine speaking. Sorry, I was a little slow on that uptake. Liam, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Liam Moran. I work at the University of Illinois, doing all sorts of ed tech stuff, but primarily video production and infrastructure support and kind of automation, that sort of thing. I'm also privileged to be the contributing editor at Streaming Media Magazine and streamingmedia.com, covering the education beat.
Great. And Howard, can you introduce yourself?
Hi there, everyone. This is Howard Rosenblum. I come to you from the National Association of the Deaf. I serve both as the CEO and the Director of Legal Services, and I've been in the game for 31 years as a civil rights attorney, including technology. My previous life, before becoming an attorney, I was a computer engineer.
I'm scared of Howard because he's a lawyer. This is our next speaker is Ayal. And Ayal is also the sponsor of this program.
Hi Nadine, I'm Eyal, co-founder of VideoLink. VideoLink is a platform to create real-time captions or translations and add them to live streams as you distribute the video with the captions to social media and other streaming platforms. I'm in the industry for many years. I wrote the streaming media handbook. I published it back in 2002, and excited to be here today.
Okay, good. Why don't we start with Ayal, since you're warmed up, we'll start a question for you. So if we look at today, do all streaming services have captions on them?
No, they don't. Many of the streaming services don't have captions, which I think they should have. We can see a good trend among social media platforms. They enable automation, so you can get automated closed captioning with every live stream that comes in. Unfortunately, you have to upload caption files with recorded video. And I think the reason we have this conversation here today is to discuss where things can get better and how we can improve and help the industry understand the technology and make it accessible to all.
Okay. This is Nadine again. Liam, you also have a good kind of technical experience with captions. What are you using captions for?
We use captions. So convergence is kind of one of the things that I've been writing a lot over the past few years. So technological convergences. So lately, we've had a great improvement in the quality of automated captions because of the kind of large language model boom. Before it was extraordinarily bad, and now it's tolerably bad, I would say. And so the kind of convergence between, they want large language models for other things, for generating text and that sort of thing, answering questions and solving problems. But we've wanted it for a long time for captioning. And there's not a ton of money in captioning, unfortunately, but there is a lot of money in discovery and other things that require text to speech to make audio and video materials that are on the web searchable. And so that kind of convergence between the need to, or the desire to make money off of discovery led to the creation of these large language models that are making captioning of a reasonable quality possible for us. So that's one. And then another, so again, we use captions for its intended purpose, which is making video accessible for those that can't hear the audio track, but also for search and for metadata and for helping people find the content that is in the videos that otherwise wouldn't be accessible without machine readable caption files or caption data.
This is Nadine again. So Liam, the educational systems, do they have a requirement for captions for their content?
So for public schools, definitely. So public schools are required under 508 to make everything that we publish, both publicly for the public, it has to be accessible, it has to be captioned. Technically, it has to be audio described, and also anything that's used in courses for students should also be captioned. And those expectations will become more rigorous over the next few years.
This is Nadine again. Now, Howard, we have, I guess, a kind of a imperfect understanding of what is required in streaming and what is optional. Can you give us a little bit of background as to where the state is right now?
Absolutely, Nadine. This is Howard speaking. Let's start with what Liam just introduced, which was 508. This comes from the Rehabilitation Act, and it has many parts to it. 508 has to do with federal government and any place that receives federal funding. Due to the fact that this environment that he introduced does receive federal fundings, that has requirements for websites, mobile apps. More so than that, there are other laws in place which serve this purpose. One is the Communication, Video, and, the 21st Century Communication and Video Accessibility Act, CVAA, as it is affectionately known. This law was put on the books in 2010, mandating that anything broadcast first on television and then moved to the internet has to be captioned if it is native broadcast. And then after that, from my organization at the National Association of the Deaf, we had a suit against Netflix. That particular case was such that the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was passed in 1990, was brought to bear before the internet existed, before there was any specific legal language around that. So we applied the ADA to this case. And we wanted to ensure that the internet indeed was subject to the ADA. And also that Title II, which has to do with public schools, as Liam introduced. And so any government entity, be that federal or state or local, under 508 and Title II of the ADA had the same mandate. Also, private businesses under Title III of the ADA. And Netflix is an organization we wanted to compel to have captions. At the time, they realized that they drew more people in who wanted to watch the content if it was captioned or accessible. The famous example is curb cuts, which exists in the physical world in the past. If you recall, curbs ended on a square corner, and people who were in wheelchairs weren't able to, say, get to stores to buy things that they needed. In addition to that, you might have had parents with baby strollers, you might have seen people with rollaboard luggage, and any number of other applications. So making that accessible to one population allowed many more people on those sidewalks. So the same holds true. A high percentage of young people nowadays watch video content with the captions enabled on all the time. And by adding those captions, you draw in more eyes to your product.
This is Nadine. Now, Howard, you also mentioned that in our planning call, you went from Netflix to a few other streaming services. So carry us on along the kind of path as to what happened once Netflix was encouraged by your legal means to add captions. There are other streaming services like, who else?
Absolutely, Nadine. This is Howard speaking. We went after Netflix because obviously they were the first to market with large-scale streaming of movie content. And they were unwilling to do so voluntarily, so we took them to court. After which we prevailed and we set a precedent. And then we approached, well, many other large streaming services and said, hey, everyone, either you can go the same route, we can be friends, or we'll see you in court. Up to you. And the result was that everyone wanted to do the right thing, fortunately, and that's what happened. So we have 100% captioned on most major streaming services. Of course, there's always going to be emerging services, new technologies. Also, for example, we've seen a huge increase in the podcast space, and largely that is, well, if not wholly inaccessible to deaf and hard of hearing people. So right now we're in the middle of a case at the moment toward ensuring podcast accessibility. And hopefully we'll see some more similar accommodations in captions in that space as well.
This is Liam. I just wanted to jump in if I can. Howard brought up so many interesting things, one of which is I've heard him refer to it as the curb cut effect, but what kind of is generally you'd call universal design, where you do something to help a target population that needs something, but a lot of unintended parts of the population benefit from it. So in curb cuts, you have strollers, you have bicyclists, you have people like me that have to push big carts full of video equipment around to campus. And, I look at the ADA maps of buildings so I can plan, okay, I need to go in this door. I'll be able to find an elevator here, and I'll be able to get my gear into that room without having to unload a cart and carry it upstairs or something crazy like that. Another thing I wanted to add too is Netflix. He mentioned it's kind of a Genghis Khan approach where it's surrender or die, but either get sued or become our friend. And in Netflix's case, and in a lot of the cases, they do become a very good friend to accessibility. So Netflix is a really good example where now the standards for online captioning are really published by Netflix. So a lot of people reference Netflix's how long should a caption be for a widescreen video, that sort of thing. And then Apple's another really good example where they were sued for
this is
iTunes
Nadine. Let me cut you off just
Go ahead.
because I want to get into that a little bit later. And
Sure.
because I know that there's a lot of technical questions and I want to make sure we just lay the groundwork first. I promise you we won't forget about these things.
Go right ahead. Sorry.
I promise. This is Nadine. Imran, why don't you give us a little bit of background about the broadcast, especially the ATSC3's use of captions?
Sure, this is Imran. ATSC3 uses, for the uninitiated, ATSC3 is a new broadcast video standard. So the standard of broadcast video that we have, that is, the legacy standard has been around since the 90s. And that's ATSC1. Don't ask me about ATSC2. We can get into that, but it's not really relevant. ATSC3 is a new standard that was approved, I believe, in 2017, and it's just rolling out now with a number of stations across the country. In fact, I think there was a stat about a large percentage, let's say 80% of America has at least one ATSC3 station in their market. So it's the new next gen standard. You need a new TV or a set-top box with an ATSC3 tuner to receive it. Now, one of the new things about this standard is that it updates the video codec. So it uses H.264 instead of MPEG-2. But it also updates the media transport. And one of the benefits is that it uses MPEG- as the media transport. So anyone who is producing dash video for streaming can use that exact same video and publish it for broadcast. And that's a new and different advantage that broadcasters can use, because now, pretty much everyone today is a hybrid broadcaster. They publish their video both online as well as over the air. Every broadcaster, and so unifying their workflow is an important goal for them, and it helps them standardize their video workflows. With regard to captions, there's a new format for captions that's mandated by ATSC3 that's called IMSC1. It's a variant of TTML, which is an XML-based format. It's fragmented into MPEG fragments delivered over the air, just like MPEG- delivers audio and video. So it sits alongside the audio and video fragments as what we call binary text or subtitle or caption segments. And so because it travels in a parallel path, it can be easily replaced. And so the good thing about that is that you can have multiple language captions. You can allow the end user to customize the look and feel of the captions. And because ATSC3 also allows hybrid broadband and broadcast delivery, you have a lot more options to choose from in terms of the delivery. So for example, while we want all video to have captions travel alongside the video for reliability reasons, you may want captions in multiple languages. And so you could, for example, have the English language caption be a part of the broadcast, but then in an area with a lot of Filipino viewers, you could allow for Tagalog captions to be delivered over broadband. So there's a lot of possibilities that ATSC3 provides in terms of captions, and we can get into more details later too.
This is Nadine. So Imran, so realistically, these are things that are not available previously in the traditional broadcast world. Is that right?
Yes, correct. In previous broadcasts, actually in analog broadcasts, captions were encoded in the video frame itself, literally as a line 21 in the video frame. And then with digital, they basically took those line 21 captions and encoded them as a part of the MPEG stream, but it's still embedded in the video. So the fact that they're kind of separate and can be replaced, can be enhanced, is a good thing.
This is Nadine. Now you started to give us a good introduction to what your business is and how you do captioning. Do you want to give us kind of a short summary in terms of what you're doing there, especially because we've now covered a bunch of streaming, we've covered a little bit of broadcast. You've got a great kind of experience in this area. Why don't you give us a summary?
Yeah, sure. This is Eyal. We looked at captioning as a way to enhance the user experience, but we had to think about what kind of use cases they will be using it for. So we separated captions to live streaming, captions that have to go over the stream, included with the stream. Then you have the model where video is recorded in advance and you have to prepare the captions separately and kind of merge them together to make it accessible, video on demand. And then you have the third, which is what we are doing now, which is a live meeting when the captions have to be part of it. And if there is a two-way communication like we have now, so you need an ASL interpreter together. We focus on the live streaming and the video on demand. And we, from day one, integrated with all the captioning software and hardware that are in the market to allow human operators, stenograph operators, insert the captions into the video right from their equipment through the mediators or the different services that provide captioning online into the live stream. That's been great. It's been working for a couple of years, but many cannot afford a human captioner, the fee of a human captioner. Many companies that don't have that kind of a budget. So what we did is we integrated with a couple of services to support automated closed captioning, AI-driven captioning. And the key was to build an editor to provide the customer with the ability to edit the automated captions that has, unfortunately, a lot of mistakes. Maybe it's going to be different in 10 years, but right now it has a lot of mistakes. And you want to try to bring accuracy as close as possible to a human captioner's output. And we introduced that editor to help increase the accuracy of the output. We also added translation. So you could, for example, take a native English speaker, pass it through the AI, come out with Spanish translated output, and then insert it into the video. And because we are creating a delay that the user can control, the captions are actually showing up right when we speak. So they're very close to the audio, which is better even than human stenograph operators that the process takes 3 seconds of a delay. That's been great. There are many ways to improve the service. I think that the next frontier is going to be to try to figure out a way to support live events like we have now with that kind of a service. But the most important thing is to see where captions are going to help the industry and perhaps then promote development and growth in the industry. Captions are with the video, either right now with CAA 608 in the video, CAA 708 also in the video, ATS 300 separately. Imran brought very good use cases for different languages. But the most important thing to remember is that captions are meta tags that are going along with the video, and they're opening a lot of possibilities and opportunities for different businesses to try to build on top of it. Just to give you a couple of examples, you could trigger e-commerce calls based on the captions on the audio. The instant audio speech-to-text translation can launch e-commerce offering. It's definitely searchable. So right after the live video is recorded and made available as video on demand, users can go and search pieces and jump into areas using the caption. So these are just two examples, but I think personally that captions are key for making video more interactive down the road.
Okay, this is Nadine speaking. So I want to first go back to the comparison between human versus machine captioning. And Howard and I spoke about this on our planning call, and I know he has some opinion. So Howard, can you tell us what you think about how different captionings are done?
Absolutely, Nadine. This is Howard speaking. Certainly, I would tend to agree with within our experts that machine-generated captions have come a long, long way. But there remain some issues, lingering issues that are there between either human-generated or machine-generated captioning. So certainly, not all deaf and hard of hearing people have the same needs. Some folks who are hard of hearing have a bit of residual ability to hear, so they can kind of follow what's going on. But maybe in a live context, they would be okay. They might need captions as support when they miss something. They might prefer to have less of a lag time because hearing it and seeing it have to happen closer together, which can help, which can impinge on accuracy. Other folks might prefer to have more accuracy, even at the cost of lag time. So you have differing views here, and you can kind of meet people where their needs are. Situations might happen, for example, in a classroom where you have an individual service provider in an individual room that would meet the needs of that individual student. But in a public context or for the masses, that's something else to consider. And certainly not all machine-generated captions are created equal, such as not all human-generated captions are created equal. There are quality standards that you can look at in each circumstance, be they machine or human, and you can make sure you get the best in whatever format that you're looking at. There are certainly metrics. There are not set agreed upon metrics. You can look at the resources at Gallaudet University, which is a university that serves deaf people. They have taken a look at just how you can measure the accuracy of captions. For example, if you say, "Let's eat grandma." Now, it's very important in this sentence, and it can change the meaning entirely depending on where you insert the comma. So this is an example of why captions make or break the quality of the message. Of course, to go a little bit back to what we were talking about, in a pre-recorded scenario or a video on demand scenario, they should be perfect because you've had the time to clean it up. Any errors that were entered into the generation, you can, capitalize proper names, get them spelled correctly. So there are timing issues that you don't have when it's a high quality environment. If you have machine generated, for example, we believe at the NAD that it's really important to have a human monitor, even if it's an auto-generated scenario. So it's kind of more of a hybrid approach where you get the best of both worlds. And this remains work that is ongoing until we get to an ideal solution at some future state.
This is Nadine. We have a number of questions in the chat window. I'm going to see if we can just touch on them before we go on with our regularly scheduled questions. We have one person who asks, will the host be using the Zoom-enabled sign language interpretation ASL view for this webinar? If not, why? Can anybody answer that in our group here?
I can. I know that Ann and Howard have opinions about it too. We discussed that earlier, and I thought it was a really great feature when I first heard about it. So what this is Zoom has the ability to basically like pop out a window that's dedicated for the interpreter. I used that a while back, and it was probably a poor choice because what we had was we had the interpreter appearing on the screen in the room. And by default, the interpreter is muted. So the interpreter needs to ask to be allowed to speak. And in this case, it was somebody who was signing, and then the interpreter was translating from ASL to spoken English, and that was supposed to be projected into the room over the speakers. And that's not what it was designed for. And there are other issues. Spotlighting is really the preferred way to do it. So is to put words in Howard's mouth. The way that he described it was very admirable of them to try. Very poor execution is kind of the paraphrase that I would give.
This is Nadine.
Indeed, this is Howard speaking, if I may. Just to add to what Liam said, certainly some of the rationale for Zoom to try to figure out a solution is simply because if you've got a ton of people on screen at the same time and a lot of tiles, it's very difficult to make out what the interpreter is saying at that tiny dimension. So spotlighting is, yes, you are correct, Liam, the solution of choice. But lots of people don't have control over their interface, or they just know that they're going to watch the same interpreter the whole time. And so rather than have to spotlight different people, if there are different signers or speakers in a particular Zoom meeting, it's difficult. And as Liam said, it was a good try, but it was not an ideal solution. I think, speaking for most deaf people, the preferred solution would be to use the hide non-video participants feature to reduce the screen real estate taken up with blank tiles. And that way, whoever is engaged in an active discussion in the moment can pop on. Fewer tiles at a time is always better. And certainly if you want to watch the interpreter tile the whole time, that's fine. And spotlighting it will not create that shuffle effect when people pop in and out. But yeah, that's for what people who use sign language on Zoom, that's kind of what we've come up with.
This is Nadine speaking. We have so many different questions coming both in the chat or the Q&A as well as what we've already thought to talk about. So I'm going to try to make sure I manage this so we get a chance to talk about a lot of the different things. One of the things we talked about earlier, we started to talk about the mechanics of captioning, and we've got streaming, we've got ATSC3, we've got, on demand. Does anybody on the panel here want to go into, what some of the best practices are for making sure that your captions work?
I can jump in.
Liam, thank you.
All right, so this is Liam. The hybrid model that Howard mentioned is the state of the art. So you have a first pass with the best language model, speech to text engine that you can find, and then you correct that to perfection. And that's the way that most people do it now. So it takes at least 8 times the duration of a video to caption it accurately from scratch, and to correct captions that were fairly accurately transcribed by speech to text, it takes about 2 times the duration of the video. So it's dramatically more efficient on your labor force. So having a very accurate speech to text engine and then having the opportunity to correct it is the 2 things. And Eyal's built a business on that. So if you would like to kind of share his experience, I guess.
Yeah. This is Eyal, and I can kind of insert a little bit here of context to the question. The most accurate output, of course, was stenograph operators. But again, we are challenged by the cost. People that want to add captionings are challenged by the cost. Models where it's 24/7, conferences that have to be captured, things like that, becomes very expensive if a human has to do that. Then AI comes to play. AI made a tremendous progress in the last 2-3 years only, from the old days where it needed somebody to speak for 15 minutes before it can identify patterns and style, before it can output. We launched the service a couple of months ago and immediately noticed a couple of things. For example, in a group like we are here, we all speak English, that's fine. The model will be able to provide most probably 60 to 70 accuracy if we skip technical terms. It's going to be higher. The problem is what happens if people that speak different languages are in the same meeting or are in the content of the video. Then it does not work because the model is only used to refer to the original language. Same goes for translation. So solution is not there yet. It's going there. We need a couple of years more, I think. Companies that are leading in speech-to-text services are improving every month and coming up and trying to address problems. For example, to be able to upload a list of participants with last names to create a good accuracy in sports, in live sports. It's going to be a tremendous advantage if you can upload all the players' names into the engine in advance. So I think we're in the right direction, but again, we are not there yet. So what we are offering is that editor that we built. Some customers find it very, very good, especially for live video. And I want to bring up here one more thing to consider. What we built was from a model for one-to-many. It's not for the model that we have right now, which is we are all interactive, it's real time. We build a model that is for the traditional television style of a broadcast, where you have live video or recorder that you make as live. You are sending it out, everybody is passively watching it. Then you can add the delay. And when you add the delay, you give the operator the time to go and do the corrections. It works for many customers that are happy with it. But the goal, of course, is maybe in a couple of years to be able to just plug and play, to be able to recognize different languages at the same time. That will be great. I think we're going to get there. We just need some time.
Okay, this is Nadine. Now, I know, Imran, you've had experience on the broadcast side and as well as deep technology experience. So what are some of the things that you think about when it comes to captioning?
Yeah, this is Imran. I was going to say, that's all helpful from a content producer point of view, but from a content distributor point of view, there's other things that need to be considered. One is that a lot of times distributors don't have the legal right or even the technical capability to modify the video as it comes in beyond encoding. So what that means is it makes it very important to make sure that your encoding workflow one can check for the presence of captions and alert the upstream content provider that if it's not there, if for some reason a caption isn't provided, to raise a flag and let people know as soon as possible. But then also to make sure that when you transform the content from the input to the distribution format, that it gets transformed and translated accurately. So if the video is coming in as analog, or if even now that happens sometimes, or if a video is coming in as digital but it has embedded 608 or 708 captions, and speaking from the ATSC3 perspective, it needs to be translated to IMSC1, or if it's going out streaming, it needs to be translated to WebVTT or some other format. Problems can occur in that translation, and to make sure that you've got monitoring to ensure that the captions are one, present, but then two, accurately translated from format to format is super important. And then there's nothing like spot checking, right? Making sure that whenever you've got a NOC or a monitoring center for your distributed content, to make sure that captions are on and captions are being visible, because there's also issues that can come up in captions, like positioning, right? Where on the screen the caption should appear. Particularly for sporting events or anything with on-screen graphics, you really want it not to obscure the graphics, if possible. And some of that can now be controlled by downstream clients, a phone or other content viewer devices can have some control over the size and the location of captions to some extent. So that ameliorates the problem a little bit. But these are all issues to consider when bringing forth, a distribution service, a content distribution service.
This is Nadine, and I have a follow-up question either for Imran or for Howard. Let me just catch this first, and then I'll get to Howard. Are the QA services that monitoring NOCs use, do they include checking for captions? Howard?
Yeah, many of them do. Obviously not all of them, but many of them do, and it's important to to select one that does. I think one of the issues that we saw being kind of at the cutting edge of this is on ATSC3 is that captions would sometimes also appear at the wrong time, right? Getting the timing right is also important because you don't want to be ahead of the video, right? Because then you're spoiling the effect that comes, and you don't want to be too far behind because then it's completely disorienting for the person who's trying to watch the video and read the content and remember what happened 3 seconds ago, right? And so you have to kind of get that Goldilocks timing of just, you know, right after somebody says it, you know, have it be displayed on the screen. And sometimes when you introduce conversion into the workflow, you can get captions to be delayed more than they should, and so you may have to adjust the timing back. That's one of the types of things that we had to do just by viewing and monitoring content and then trying to adjust. You know, it really it's about finding people or using the captions yourself, finding people who use captions or use the captions yourself as a real user would, and you know, that's generally the right principle of designing a service is use it as your customer would use it.
Okay, this is Nadine. I'll get Howard to complete his thought. Howard?
Absolutely, Nadine. This is Howard speaking. Just to refer back to Imran's opening remark when he talked about the legal right to adjust captions as they are given to a distributor. I need to emphasize also in content distribution scenarios, there are set inked agreements and liability if that provider fails to deliver on what is expected in terms of the content in the caption file. So distributors have to hold those content providers to account, and if not, then maybe Howard has to go after them.
This is Nadine. Howard scares me. So fortunately, I'm not on the other end of Howard's legal ear. Let's go to another question here. And I have a couple in the Q&A, but I still want to follow up one more thing that we've talked about, which was the open versus closed captions. Can one of you just define this for us and tell us what the benefits are? Who'd like to go?
I can go and explain it, and maybe Howard can emphasize kind of a little bit afterwards. Misconception, a lot of people, when they see captions that are burned into the video, which is the open captions, they think, oh, it's there and I have to see it everywhere, and it provides a good solution. But at the same time, if you, for example, want to distribute the video and it has English burned open captions on it, and you want to distribute it to South America, you'll have to then add captions above it in Spanish. So open captions, in my opinion, are great for some use cases, but it's preferred to use closed captions where the user can select that they want to see the captions if they want to. And if mostly in video on demand, if you have a way to select the translated version of the closed captions, you can, through the player, bring up the control and select, I want to see it in Spanish, for example. I want to see it in French. I want to see it in English. So I'm a big advocate of closed captioning, not so much of an open captioning. I've heard that in South Korea, open captions is kind of a must, and you have to have it everywhere. But in most other countries, closed captions will do a much better job, I think.
This is Liam. Just specific use cases for closed caption would be like digital signage and social media where people are scrolling but not hearing. So it's very eye-catching to have text on the screen. Those are.
This is Imran. I think you meant open caption.
Yes,
open captions, yeah.
Yep.
Right. And you know, I think, you know, open versus closed caption, this is Imran again, open versus closed caption is kind of a legacy of the analog format where you didn't really have a lot of choice. And so you either had to have it burned into the video frame or, you know, traveling separately as data and then turned on. I think what another possibility in kind of next gen video clients is if some of them decide as a convention to have closed captioning, but on by default, right? So you can have closed captioning and it's separable from the video frame, which technically I think is a better approach, but you can have the setting turned on by default by players, so people don't have to hunt and find it.
Yeah, this is Howard speaking. Exactly. I couldn't agree more with you, Imran. Absolutely. You're so right to say so. In the past, in the analog days, you either had them on or you had to have special equipment to decode them and view them. And now in the digital environment, anyone can see anything. So there are specific situations, certainly, such as maybe a public place like a museum or an exhibit or something similar where you don't have a user interface device to toggle them. And yes, captions should be left on. In a streaming environment, the default is usually off and you can toggle them on. But yes, if you're at an impasse and you don't have an option then for size, format, contrast, color, background, language choice, then maybe on, if possible, it should be a digital equivalent of open, default on. And then the user can adjust their viewing preferences.
This is Nadine. Now, Howard, some of what Howard was just talking about was the requirements for being able to adjust captions on content. And in terms of size of font, placement, etc. I think I have that. One of the questions I have from Vicky Kipp is, we use SCC as our official caption file format because SCC includes caption positioning and the SCC code is free and widely available. What caption file format may become the de facto standard in the future? Does anybody here have some opinions on that? And briefly, just because we have 3 more questions that have come in the Q&A as well as our own questions.
This is Eyal, I can jump in.
Sure.
Streaming services today require SRT or VTT, and the control of how the captions will look and where they're going to be positioned should be part of the player. Then the user can select, I want to see it on the upper left side, on the middle lower section. Again, use cases, so sports, you will put it away from the ticker and the names, news as well. But it's a good idea to keep the captions separate from the player and allow the player and the user to dictate their experience, in my opinion.
This is Nadine. We also decided to talk a bit more about podcasts, and I want to make sure, Liam was talking about it earlier, Howard has talked about it in the planning. What do we do about podcasts? Howard, why don't we go to you first? Why don't you give us a little bit of background?
Certainly, Nadine, this is Howard speaking. For deaf and hard of hearing people, historically, we've had no access to podcast content, and we've asked, and most are provided in transcript form, not in caption form, because really captions are for video content. So there are many solutions, and there's no perfect way where this can be done, but to have the information accessible and some indicator of where the speaker is, like follow the bouncing ball type thing, so you don't have to read it all after the fact. It can be a real-time experience on an interactive transcript. I should say also that transcripts are hugely important for other groups of people, such as folks who are both deaf and blind, because captioned content is all well and good, and transcripts should be available in those platforms as well, so that deaf-blind people can process and read them. Because again, this is not going through video, so it's technically not captions.
This is Liam. I'll just add on to that the interactive transcripts that he describes are things that can be built using the same caption data that would be in a video, where it's showing the segmentation, so it's highlighting the part that's being actively spoken. And then another challenge that kind of presents itself with podcasts is that it's incredibly important to accurately identify the speaker, so that if you're reading the transcript instead of listening, that you can follow along with turn taking and who's saying what and that sort of thing. And that's a difficult thing for automatic speech recognition to do. And so another thing in addition to accurate words, accurate captioning, accurate punctuation, that sort of thing.
This is Howard, if I may. Toward that, I would add, you could not be more correct, Liam, absolutely. Most podcast content is not live, right? So you have the time in post-production to identify speakers, insert proper punctuation, and clean it up.
This is Nadine. Now, one of the things that is always very challenging for people is live. So VOD, you should not have mistakes in it. That goes without saying, although I'm sure that there are many instances where there are. But when we talk about live, what happens to, for instance, the ability to do captioning live? Is this something that was done with an AI system, with a person? You know, what's the best practice now, especially now that more live streaming is going on?
This is Eyal, I can jump in. Traditionally, you would use a stenograph operator if you want to achieve 99% accuracy. You would just let them listen and type, and that's how live captioning has been done traditionally over with news channels, right? So that's. But now we are on the internet, so it's a different story. And if you move into the AI model, think again about the one-to-many approach. And when you are in that environment, you can create a delay. That's what we did. So what we are offering is plug any video source, create that delay. Depends how long you want to give yourself time to correct the AI, and then let the output go out with the highest possible accuracy that you managed to achieve after you did the editing. We have many use cases where the live stream is going out and it has a pretty nice accuracy, very, very close to a human output. I think for now, this is a good solution. I hope that in a couple of years, the level of speech-to-text output results is going to bring us to a situation where you don't need to feed the system with last names and terms, so it can print it properly, but it will be able to identify all what it needs and output a high accurate programming.
This is Nadine speaking. I want to,
If I may, this
I'll
is
let
Howard, if
Howard
I may,
speak
real
first.
quick.
Yes.
Yep. Really briefly, this is Howard speaking. I wanted to mention, just as Eyal was saying, I think the best practice for caption, yes, is probably the live model, but there are different expectations in different scenarios. For those who are in a business environment, maybe they own the rights for whatever corporate information is there versus an individual who is working on private posts on their YouTube channel or their podcast. The expectation would be wholly different. In a corporate setting where this is a for-profit venture, you're expected a higher level of accuracy. If you're just a lone content provider, then you have some flexibility. But I hope that the platforms will provide tools for those standalones to use AI to their benefit, and editing tools for the AI. Certainly, they would want more eyes on their content. They would want to draw more viewers, and that's one way to do it.
In fact, this is Nadine. This runs into the last question I have, and we only have a few minutes left. So we'll, again, we'll try to do this quickly, but what are the kinds of questions that people should be asking their captioning vendor? Why don't I go to Liam first? Liam?
Just very briefly, how can you opportunistically use a set of data that I can provide to you? So jargon terms that are going to be used in the speech. It's the hardest thing in education to do is commencement ceremonies where you just have a list of people walking across the stage and having their names read. So how can you opportunistically use the data that you might have available to you. So if you have students swipe their university ID or something like that before they cross the stage, and then that gets sent back to the camera and that gets printed on just the way that they have it officially spelled, that sort of thing is that would be my number one thing. How could you use data?
This is Nadine. Imran?
You know, this is Imran. One of the things that I'm looking forward to in future technology. So you can ask your vendors what they're doing now, and they kind of all have a certain baseline level of functionality and how they can improve it. But I'm looking forward to, I've seen some pretty cool tech demos and work on standards committees where they're trying to include a picture-in-picture of sign language alongside the video, so interpreted as opposed to translated, like one of the questions is asking, is really interesting, because sign language interpretation, from what I don't understand it, but from what I understand, it can convey a meaning different than the captions, or in increased meaning compared to the captions. And so the ability to technically provide that as a picture-in-picture or a side-by-side video that comes along with the streaming video would be really cool. And I think there's folks that are trying to make that happen, both for human-generated interpretation as well as AI-generated interpretation, which is really interesting.
Okay, this is Nadine. We have 2 minutes, and 1 minute goes to Howard first, and then Ayel. Howard?
Absolutely. Just allow me to clarify. You are correct, Imran, just to make sure that we have both ways of communicating available to us. The difference being, of course, in a ASL interpreting situation, that is not transcribed English. So if you use another signed language of another country, it's not a one-to-one substitution. You might need both, if at all possible. Certainly, having sign language interpretation and captions available would be critical.
This is Nadine. Ayel, you have the last word here.
Yes, I think everyone should use closed captioning. Definitely, if you're doing video on demand, that's a must to have. The more, the better. And with live streaming, I think that you have to look first on your budget and see what you can do. If it's very important, like Howard mentioned, for your corporate product to be accurate, go and pay the extra fee to get a human captioner that will do the job. And if not, and you have a soccer league live streaming, so just use AI, but at least give the user, the end viewer, the ability to get it, to be able to see it.
This is Nadine, and Evan has showed up, so it means that we are out of time. I want to thank everyone on the panel and all the questions that came up. This was a really interesting kind of introduction for us. We will, I'm sure, cover this again. And for the questions we didn't get to, I apologize. Evan, thank you so much for having us on.
Sure. Great job moderating. Great job, panelists. Really fascinating topic. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Video Link, for sponsoring this awesome panel. Really important topic. Just really quickly, the song was Smashing Pumpkins. I'm sorry, the song was 1979. The band was Smashing Pumpkins, and our winner is Craig Stragus, who wins a $50 gift certificate from Amazon, courtesy of Streaming Media Connect. All of this content will be live on Streaming Media's YouTube page. I'm sure Steve's put it in the chat a couple of times, but he'll hopefully put it there again. There's a bunch of content already there. And I want to let everybody know that we have another panel in just about a half an hour at 1 o'clock. It's sponsored by Fir Tree Systems. It's a great, actually, keynote. And I hope you come back in about a half an hour. So thanks, everybody. Great panel. Thank you, audience, for sticking around, and we'll see you in about 30 minutes.
Thank you. Goodbye.
You.